Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, the first Full Court Trap Pod episode of the year of our Lord 2025. Time to get into this new year action. We got a lot of exciting basketball headlines to talk about, a lot of games this weekend. But first, as always, Blake Recruit Zone Smith, my man, how are you doing?
Doing great, man. How about you?
I'm doing better now that I see your hat choice there tonight.
Yeah,
I'm rocking with the drip there.
yeah.
That
I actually just
that
went to a game this week against who was it?
Brown.
Brown. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So it
You
was a
should have
pretty
got
fun experience.
some take over your trap footage for the viewers out there.
Yeah, it was kind of loud there. It's kind of hard to do much, but
Yeah, it is. I'll be on site tomorrow for that big game. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But first, we got to talk about what happened in the past week. Had some notable action going on. I think we'll start off with the take that aged very, very poorly, aged like milk. I exposed ourselves on the TikTok page with our West Virginia Kansas game takes. Nobody really believed in the Mountaineers here, Blake. And what did they do? They went into Allen Fieldhouse and they got their first win in that environment in the history of their program. So 1 point win there for the Mountaineers. Javon Small, he hit the free throw at the end, and then KJ Adams tried to put up a prayer that was never going to go in, never had a shot. Well contested. Some people argued that it was a foul. I thought it looked straight up to me, but man, what a win for Darian DeVries. He's got that program rolling right now. About as good of a start as you could ask for in Big 12 play, huh, Blake?
yeah, definitely. They had control for most of the game too. The second half, the Jayhawks had a bit of a comeback, but I mean, Mountaineers going into the fog and the crazy environment. That's just unreal win for that program. And I mean, that West Virginia team could be special come March.
They're definitely going to be a little bit frisky for some teams in the Big 12 and possibly beyond. I didn't think that they'd be able to overcome the storm Kansas put up to come back from down 18. It just felt like one of those games where Kansas was going to get that Fog Allen magic going, but it wasn't meant to be. Zeke Mayo, he had 27. He had a and one to tie the game at 61. I kind of thought we were headed for OT there and that they'd come out on top, but wasn't the case, wasn't their night. And Bill Self, he's got a lot to reevaluate here with this group because they're trending in the wrong direction. They've really kind of looked just incohesive as an overall unit recently. Blake, what's our concern level looking like for this Kansas team? Because I'm starting to see some holes on this roster and things that just aren't crumbling the right way there if you're a Jayhawk fan.
Right now I put it like 65% concerned. Like it's concerning how underperforming they've been so far, but still got the pieces to be really good as a team. I mean, you got Zeke Mayo who had 27 against West Virginia. He's been really up and down, I feel like, at times this season, but he's still their second leading scorer with almost 15 a game on 38% from three. But guys like DeJuan Harris, Rylan Griffin, guys like that, even AJ Store, you pay them over like 60K, 600K for NIL, and you're just not getting a whole lot of production out of them.
Yeah, no, AJ Store, speaking of the transfers and the NIL money that was given out, he got a lot of it. He got a bag to leave
Yeah.
Wisconsin, and he had that goose egg over there on New Year's Eve, I believe, is when this game was
Mm-hmm.
played. Then you
Yep.
got guys like David Coyd off the bench. He had another goose egg. That's another guy that they've kind of relied on a little bit in a role. And Rylan Griffin,
Mm-hmm.
he only had 3 coming off the bench as well. Just a lot of pressure that was put on Zeke Mayo to get the job done. Dickinson had a quiet game as well. I think he only had 10 and 10, if I recall correctly. But
Yeah.
we can't,
10 and
we
12
can't,
actually.
yeah,
But, I mean, still, it's
yeah, it's
4 and 10 from the field as well. So I mean, that's not
yeah,
going to cut it when you're supposed to be one of the best, if not the best big in all the country.
no, and we went into this season thinking that he was the best big by far, and Janai Broom is just completely taking his lunch money in that regard. It's not even
Yeah.
close right now. But for Kansas, I mean, I think that this team, there's some obvious holes on this roster, and they're just not kind of connecting right now. But I'm not going to have too much concern yet because I just think that there's too much talent on this team for them to not get like, a top 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. Like this team, even at their worst, I think they're still like a 5 or a 4 seed simply because of the talent. And then Bill Self, I mean, his resume speaks for itself. He's going to figure out something that's going to make them at least a serviceable team. Could they have the national championship aspirations we thought in the preseason? I'm not so sure anymore. That kind of keeps dwindling by the day, and they're going to keep getting tested in a tough Big 12 league. That is definitely for sure as they continue moving through this. But Blake, what do you think that I know you mentioned the concern level being at like a 65? What about in terms of strictly, just like March Madness postseason success? Do we think this is a Final Four caliber team, national title team still, like we hailed them as in the preseason? Because it's starting to look a little bit bleak.
I mean, as of right now, I don't think they're anywhere close to being the Final Four type of team. Obviously, they got the pieces, but they're just not cohesively working as a team. Like Zeke Mayo, he really can't be the guy to lead that team. It's nothing against him. He's a really good player, but I just don't think that brings a team like to a high standard. I mean, if you really want to be a great team with that Kansas team, I think guys like AJ Storr, Hunter Dickinson, guys like that, I think those need to be the top 2 guys on that team because AJ Storr, I mean, he was highly recruited from different programs. He was a star at Wisconsin. Did really well in March. I mean, he's really good. So I really think those guys need to be some of the top players on that team for them to make a run. And I also think Rylan Griffin needs to step up his game because, I mean, I really like the guy. I like his game. But, I mean, he's not performing at a rate we thought he would have been at.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of untapped potential on this roster. A lot of guys you expected to see more out of that you're just not getting so far. And I mean, Big 12 play, this was obviously the debut for them and not the type of start you want to make. Where do you see this team finishing in the Big 12? Because I think that the clear best team in the Big 12 right now is Iowa State. Do we think that they're up there in that 2 slot, or are they falling back in kind of the 3 area? Because, I mean, the Big 12, it's going to be a decent league this year.
I mean, it's kind of hard to say right now, but I mean, I'd put them at like the 2-3 spot.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa State and possibly West Virginia. I think BYU's really good. I think Baylor and Houston are also going to make some noise in the Big 12. So, I mean, it's going to be a really competitive conference, top to bottom, I feel like, this season.
Yeah, I'm going to make a semi-hot take here. I think that Kansas finishes 4th in the Big 12. I'm going to go Iowa State, then I'll go Baylor. I think they're going to start figuring some things out. Houston will start getting some things together, and then I think Kansas goes 4th. I'm just not super high on this team right now, but they could definitely prove me wrong. And there's talent on that roster if they can get it rolling. There's no reason they can't be competing up there with Iowa State to try and take that league. But speaking of another underwhelming blue blood team this year, North Carolina, they've taken yet another stumble, this time on the road at a injury-battered Louisville Cardinals team, losing 70-83 on Thursday night, I believe. Or no, that was Wednesday night, actually. Excuse me.
Wednesday,
But, yeah. Blake, every time something seems to go right for this North Carolina team, like the win against UCLA, there's immediately another setback. And, I mean, we've talked about how there's not going to be a lot of resume opportunities in the ACC for Carolina because it's relatively just a weak league this year, and this is not the start you wanted to have, dropping one to a Louisville team that's, they're not bad, but they're a shell of what they were going into the year.
Yeah, this North Carolina team, it's really time to start thinking about them potentially missing the tournament, if not being like a really late, like 15, 14, 13 type of seed. I mean, they're just really not performing well. I mean, they're bigs. We've talked about it a million times. They're not playing well. I mean, you got guys like Van Allen Lubin chucking up floater layups, hitting top of the side of the backboard. Like that, that's just embarrassing to say the least. When their 5-man is James Scott, who, don't get me wrong, is really good for Louisville, but I mean, he's not someone that should be dominating them. And he had 11 and 8 and 2 blocks against UNC, while UNC's bigs, their 2 big men combined for 12 points, with that being Jalen Washington and Ben Allen Lubin. So, I mean, when you're almost getting outscored by one guy, it's time to pack it up, UNC. And then also for the UNC side, Ian Jackson, kid's a lottery pick. I mean, he's doing this night in, night out now as a starter. Had 23 on 7 of 15 from the field. I mean, he's just really fun to watch. He's great at scoring. He's really not a bad defender as well. Had a steal on the block against Louisville. So, I mean, right now, he's really like the only guy on that team that gets me excited for them. I mean, RJ Davis, what are you doing? 4 of 14 from the field. I mean, it's just getting unreal at this point.
Yeah, RJ Davis, he continues to be one of the bigger letdowns of the year. I mean, I had a lot of hopes for this guy going into the preseason. You know, I thought he might be up there in National Player of the Year conversations, and that just hasn't been what he's shown so far. And if you're a North Carolina fan, I mean, at least Ian Jackson's finally getting his flowers and being put in the starting lineup there by Hubert, because he's about the one saving grace for them right now. And when we talk about this Carolina team, you know, possibly missing the tournament, I mean, that's starting to become a very possible thing, because they go this Saturday, they're going to be playing on the road at a tough Notre Dame team. I mean, anytime you
Sold
go
out already, too.
yeah,
Like,
I mean, anytime you go on the road in conference play, it doesn't matter if the team has a great record or anything. I mean, Notre Dame's sitting at 7-6. It's going to be a tough night, and I mean, it's just the resume opportunities. Like I said, they've ran out long ago. The non-conference was really where they wanted to build that up, because this ACC, it's a little bit more down than it has been in years prior. And for Carolina, I mean, I think it's definitely time to start sounding the alarms here, because you're getting close to double-digit losses, and we're only in the 3rd day of January, which is really unprecedented for a UNC squad who's usually a threat every year.
and Louisville's projected right now, I think, to miss the tournament as a whole. So, like, if you're getting blown out by 13 to this team, then, I mean, I think that really speaks volumes of where you stand as a team.
Yeah, and I mean, Louisville, they've got players on that team still, so you don't want to take away from them too much. But, I mean, the injuries to Keshawn Pryor, that was a really big blow for them. And, I mean, that's the guy that kind of got things going for them. And this just isn't a Louisville team that's, you know, what they were. But do we think, you know, switching more to the Louisville side of things here, because we've talked at length on this podcast about the issues of North Carolina.
Yeah.
I mean, those issues aren't going away. If you want to hear us talk about them, just go back to any episode from like the last 2 months. But for Louisville, I mean, this is a big win. It's one that they needed to have to kind of get their tournament resume back on the tracks. Do we think that maybe once we get into March, we could see them sneak their way in? It's going to depend on how they finish the conference play, but I think that Pat Kelsey could potentially claw his way in, and if he does, that's a massive success for year one.
If there's any ACC team that's been like underwhelming of sorts that could sneak in, I'd say it's Louisville right now. I mean, Rain Smith, Chucky Hepburn, I think those 2 guys can really lead that team. It sucks about Kason Pryor being out for the year. He was a big asset for that team. But, I mean, they still got the pieces to make noise. I mean, Noah Waterman, he's a really good 3-point shooter for them. Javon Hadley, he's another guy who I think is going to be a good player for them throughout the season. And then coming off the bench, Rain Smith with 4 threes on the night. Big-time performance for him. So, I mean, it's really not a bad team.
Yeah. And before we move on here from this matchup completely, circling back to North Carolina, I want to do a little fill-in-the-blank practice here. So if this Carolina team gets things turned around and finds themselves on the right side of the bubble as compared to now where they're on the wrong side and get in the tournament, what's going to be the story there? What will have happened to get this team on the right track? And is it going to be a guy like Ian Jackson just being a lead, or is it going to take more from those bigs that we've mentioned all year round that Carolina just doesn't have right now? I mean, I think that it can't personally be put on all of Ian Jackson's shoulders. Like that, you're asking too much out of a freshman there. I think that what it's really going to come down to is R.J. Davis has to be the veteran leader that you expect him to be. He's got to be more efficient. He's got to be a better distributor of the ball. And then I think those bigs just have to show some kind of sign of life because it's been non-existent so far.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I really don't think the bigs are going to improve at all, to be honest with you. I mean, we're 3 months into the season, 3.5, and the
Yeah.
problems haven't been fixed. I mean, I just don't think it's going to be fixed at all in that aspect. But R.J. Davis, I mean, I do think he can pick up his performances and his production. I mean, he's been shot chucking all year, looking like a Caleb Love type of guy. But I mean, I definitely think he can pick up his production. I mean, he was a National Player of the Year contender going into the season. So, I mean, I without a doubt think he can step it up. So, really, I mean, it'd be him. Elliot Cadeau really needs to step it up. 4 and 5 against Louisville on like 1 of 5 from the field. I mean, they're just really disappointing for a guy who's a reclass guy last year and just really hasn't lived up to his potential.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I mean, circling back to RJ Davis before we move on, the thing that's been so frustrating with him this year, and we've talked about it before, is just, we know the kind of player he's capable of being, and he's just got to find a way to get that out of him so he can elevate this team. And Cadeau, like you said, he needs to improve. The bigs, I just don't know if they have it in them. And I will mention as well for this Carolina team, something that's going to hurt them is Seth Trimble. He's actually out with an injury right now, and he's been showing some signs of, a real breakout year, and he's been a solid force for them so far. I'm not sure how long exactly he's going to be out, but I don't think that he played in this Louisville game, if I'm correct. I don't remember seeing him out there.
He didn't.
I believe it's a shoulder injury for him, so you want to see him get himself right and get back there in the lineup and help them out because they need all the help they can get. But moving on from one of our more talked about teams this year, North Carolina, for the wrong reasons, let's talk about the Illinois team that just absolutely beat the brakes off Oregon last night in a late night matchup. 10 o'clock Eastern. That was a late one, Blake. I didn't get to catch too much of that, but man, what a statement there, because I did not see that coming at all. I thought Oregon, that game was being played in Eugene, I believe. And, this just has been a bad week to be an Oregon Duck. I mean, you just got blitzed by Ohio State in the playoff, and then your basketball team comes out here and lays a donut against Brad Underwood's squad. What happened in this one, Blake?
It really was just a mix of Kylan Boswell, Trey White, Jack U, and Ben Humerich. Just big-time performances. I mean, Ben had 18 points on 7 of 11 from the field, 4 threes. Jack U had 16 points on 6 of 11 from the field. Trey White had 20 and 11. I mean, in a crazy environment like Oregon, and you're putting up 20 and 11 in a blowout win, I mean, that's legit.
And no, that's very legit.
And then Kylan Boswell having 15 points, 4 assists, and 2 steals on the night. I mean, they just dominated that game all in all. And then they had Jake Davis also coming off the bench, 12 points, 5 of 6 from the field, and he's really not given much to that team this season. So, I mean, that's unreal, to be honest with you, on the Oregon perspective. You let a guy who hasn't played hardly at all in the season, and you let him come in and drop 12 on you. That's when you know you're kind of cooked.
Yeah, and I mean, when Illinois comes out shooting 57% and 55 from 3, I mean, that's just kind of, hands up, not your night. Like,
yeah.
if I'm an Oregon fan, I'm not too worried about this because, I mean, when Illinois is firing at a clip like that, I mean, that's like your average Kentucky game last year when Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepherd, when they were firing on all cylinders, putting up triple digits. Like, there was just nothing they could do to slow them down in this one, and I'm not too concerned if I'm an Oregon fan moving forward. But, man, that's been a week from hell for them with their football team and now the basketball squad.
Yeah.
I feel bad for our friends over there in Eugene, Oregon. But, man, I'm trying to see here who they have next, actually. I want to look it up before we move on.
Talk about Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon. I want to see who they got
They play
Maryland on Sunday.
Maryland at home, and
Yeah, so
that's not going to be an easy game at all.
that's going to be another test, and I mean that definitely isn't a get right game. Usually when you come out wounded like you do in a blowout loss, you want to have somebody that you can just kind of get yourself right against, and they're going to have to take that Maryland squad serious, or else that's going to be back-to-back losses there for the
Yeah.
Ducks of Oregon. But moving on from the week that was, let's look ahead to the weekend that we got on tap here. SEC play is finally opening up, and I cannot wait. This last about 2 weeks of just nothing when it comes to the non-conference slate was absolutely brutal to slug through, but we're going to be rewarded big time because there's a lot of great matchups in this conference specifically. Starting off with the team, Blake, that you are currently donning on your head there, the Kentucky Wildcats. They've got an undefeated Florida Gators squad coming into Lexington at 11 a.m. So everybody out there, make sure you got your alarm clock set. This is a weird early tip-off. I will be in the building at Rupp Arena. I'm sure the environment's going to be electric. I can't wait to see how that goes. But Blake, I'm going to start with you. What do we think is going to happen in this game? You think that Florida continues to roll and keeps that undefeated streak alive, or is Kentucky going to give them the first blemish on their resume in this young college basketball season?
With every hot basketball team or just sports team in general, there's got to be some sort of letdown at some point. Like, not everybody's going to go perfect seasons or anything. I think this is the moment where Kentucky can pull it off. Not saying that because of the hat I'm wearing either. I'm non-biased all the time. I've never been biased. But I do think this Kentucky team can end up pulling this one off. I mean, they just really got the pieces to do it. Otega Oweh, he's really going to have to come out strong against them. Jackson Robinson, Kobe Bryant, Andrew Carr, guys like that. If they really want to beat this team, because, I mean, Walter Clayton, Will Reichard, and Elijah Martin, they're not going to come into Rupp and with any, slack whatsoever. My bad, I lost my train of thought, but they're not going to come in to Rupp and just not fight against that team. Like, they're really going to have to come out fighting against them.
Yeah, no, I witnessed it firsthand last year. Walter Clayton Jr., he came in there and he torched Kentucky. That was a high-scoring affair. It was a great game. These two teams, they split the regular season series last year. Kentucky took the one in Gainesville, and Florida took the one at Rupp. Now, I mean, obviously, I've watched a lot of games this year. I've done a lot of tape grinding when it comes to Florida, and I mean, they're a great team. Like, there's no denying that. The pieces are there because you got Walter Clayton Jr., Will Reichard, Elijah Martin. I mean, I don't think I'm crazy in saying that could be the best backcourt in the SEC. Like, that's just a three-headed snake. That's the definition of it. And then you got Alex Condon. He's a steady interior force there to anchor them down at the five. And the only thing I have for this Florida team, I don't want to do the thing where we look at a team's schedule and be like, well, you haven't played anybody yet, like, because it just seems like you're discrediting from a team's overall body of work. But I mean, when you look at Florida's resume, I mean, Blake, the only win that I think you could say stands out is against an underwhelming North Carolina team where they won by 6. And I mean, they blew out Arizona State, they blew out Virginia, but I mean, shit, everybody's blowing out Virginia these days post Tony Bennett. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be their first test. I'll say that this is the first real test they're going to have all year, and I think that a lot of this is going to come down to the battle of Amari Williams and Alex Condon. I think that's going to be one to watch because the Kentucky fans, I mean, they've had their complaints about Amari so far, myself included. His highs are pretty solid, and he's a stable force, but when he's playing bad, I mean, it's noticeable because that zoom action that Pope likes to run, it involves a lot of Amari starting with the ball at that high post, and it can get a little bit bad sometimes if he's not feeling himself. And then I think Alex Condon's going to be a stout matchup for him, to say the least. And then you transition over to the guards. You got Lamont and Jackson Robinson, Otega Oweh going up against Elijah Martin, Walter Clayton, and Will Reichard. I mean, talk about a great matchup to watch. I mean, I think that's where the game's going to be won and lost in the backcourt, and then that front court matchup with Amari and Alex. And as much as it pains me to say it, I'm going to do it. I think the Florida Gators, they're going to stay undefeated. I think they come into Rupp. I think they're going to get a statement win here to start off conference play at the demise of my Wildcats, but it will be close, I think. I think it's going to be a close game for sure. I could see this
I do.
being I could see this being a game where the team that has the ball last wins.
Yeah, that's true. I do think though, Alex Condon, he's going to be a mismatch for Amari.
Oh,
Like,
100%.
because he can shoot the three, Condon can. He's like, I
Mhm.
think he shoot 47% from the three this year. I don't think he's took a lot of threes though, but I
Mhm.
mean he can hit it, and he's a dominant rebounding force, like 8 a game or something. And Amari's kind of struggled recently with rebounding, so I mean, it definitely could be something to look forward to if you're a Florida fan, because I
Mhm.
mean, I do think you have an advantage at that position, and maybe overall as a team have an advantage.
I think if there's a matchup Kentucky could lean on, I don't want to, say that Ruben Chinyelu is like kind of a weak spot, but I do think that Andrew Carr is kind of more of a complete player than he is, and
Yeah.
maybe Andrew Carr, he kind of willed Kentucky down the stretch in those Gonzaga and Duke games. Maybe there's a similar performance here where he makes some plays and some things that he did in the Brown game, just minor that I noticed. He was finally starting to take some shots. Like he seemed a little bit passive throughout the non-conference, and he was finally putting them up. And I want to see him keep doing that because he can stretch the floor. He's a good shooter without a doubt.
Hmm.
And I think if he steps up, that's going to be good. And I think, I mentioned the backcourt in general, but I think really Lamont Butler, he's going to have to put the clamps on Walter Clayton Jr. if Pope decides to match him up against him, or one of those guys, Otega, Jackson. They're going to have to step up and really hone in on the defensive end in this one because those guards at Florida, they can score at a high clip and they're not going to slow down. So this is definitely going to be an entertaining matchup. I think it's going to be a very high scoring game as well. So I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, I'm going. Rupp Arena is going to be popping. Fans that are going to the game tomorrow, please don't get on people for standing up. It's a basketball game. We had some issues with this against Louisville. Let's all make a great atmosphere, kick off Mark Pope's tenure in the SEC. But moving on to Rupp and going down the road a little bit, crossing the border to the great state of Tennessee, the Volunteers are hosting John Calipari's Arkansas Razorbacks in Thompson-Boling Arena. Another great, intriguing matchup to kick off this SEC play slate. The Tennessee Volunteers, obviously the number one team in the nation, undefeated still, just like the Florida Gators, and Arkansas coming in at 11-2. Just came off that win against Oakland. John Calipari exercised the demon of Jack Golke, and now they're looking to get things going here in what's going to be a tough league play for them and every team in the SEC. Blake, what are we feeling in this matchup? Do we think Cal's going to be calling those hogs over at Rocky Top, or is good old Rocky Top going to prevail here?
I think Tennessee's going to prevail here. John L. Davis is probable, so I mean he'll end up giving it a go tomorrow. But if somehow he doesn't, then I think Tennessee has the super advantage going into tomorrow. Either way, I think Tennessee pulls this one off. I think it's going to
Yeah.
be a closer game, though. I mean,
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of, we mentioned earlier Illinois blitzing Oregon. Tennessee's win against them on the road. That's looking a lot better now after that result. That was one of the
yeah,
signature wins of the non-conference for the Volunteers. And Jonas Adu, he's going back to his old home. That's a storyline in itself there. I don't know if he's going to be received too well by the Volunteer faithful there, but I think that I'm on board with you here. Tennessee, they're going to have the home court fans going crazy. I mean, they've got a very passionate fan base overall, and they're going to be excited to get this thing going. So that's automatically an advantage. And I just think that Chaz Lanier, Zakai Ziegler, I'm taking that backcourt over Boogie Flan and DJ Wagner, me personally. I
without a
think,
doubt.
yeah, I don't think I see DJ Wagner really having an answer for Zakai Ziegler. I mean, Ziegler, he's a great defender, and I think he's going to cause problems for whoever Barnes throws him at. And then you got other guys too, like Igor Milicic. He can get his own buckets anytime. And then they've got some good bench pieces as well. You know, Jordan Gainey, he put in 23 when they played that game against Illinois, and the Jemai Meshack as well. He's got a potential to play a solid role there. I think it's going to be close, though. I like Tennessee in a close one here, maybe I'll say a 6-point game. But if Arkansas is going to win this game, Blake, and go into this hostile environment and pull off what I guess would be considered an upset given the circumstances, what are they going to have to do well to come out on top?
That backcourt's going to have to come out and do well. So is the front court. I mean, that's the easiest way of putting it. So basically, the whole team needs to play well. I mean, I do Thiero being the guy for that team. I don't think it's a recipe for success. But, I mean, he's averaging almost 18 a game. So props to him on a great developmental season that he's having in his third year as a college player. Boogie Flan and DJ Wagner, and they really need to be the guys tomorrow to step up and take over that game, I feel like, especially Boogie Flan. I mean, he's averaging like 15 a game, I think. He's known as one of the top guards, freshman guards in all the country right now. So, I mean, he really needs to come out and score at an efficient level tomorrow.
Yeah, and I mean, you said obviously it's going to take like a whole effort for them to win, and that sounds kind of like a broad statement. But I mean, when you're playing a team as elite as Tennessee, it's not too far off at all to say you're going to have all your guys hitting on a given night. And I think, somebody that we're maybe not expecting, maybe a Big Z breakout game, a Trevon Brazil game. I feel like it's going to take somebody outside of their core group having a good performance to push them over the top. And I think, at this point what you're going to get out of a Thiero. You know what you're going to get out of Boogie Flan. And then there's the wild card, DJ Wagner, where he's shown it in spurts, but you're not 100% sure. Jonas Adu, I mean, he's still, getting incorporated into the team. And this Arkansas team, I think a problem they have as well is the non-conference slate. They really weren't tested, and they're coming off a series of bye games here. Their last three have been Central Arkansas, North Carolina A&T, and Oakland. So they're going to get punched in the mouth right out of the gate to start the SEC, and they're going to have to respond quick because, I mean, you get down on Tennessee early and that crowd gets going, and the intensity in that building, I think it may be too much for them to overcome. But if they do win, like I said, expect somebody out of the norm to step up and chip in a good outing. Maybe even, Carter Knox or Billy Richmond can put something up. I mean, Carter Knox, he had 17 against Oakland. Granted, that Oakland team is not the Oakland team of last year that haunts John Calipari's nightmares. But, he's showing flashes of, maturity and growing into more of a role and becoming more comfortable. But I'm definitely going
to pick it up.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm definitely going to have eyes on that one. But moving into another SEC, we're going to stick with the SEC here and then transition to other games around the country. At night at 6 o'clock, we have Oklahoma versus Alabama. Undefeated Oklahoma. They are going into Alabama over there at Tuscaloosa, Coleman Coliseum. And I think this is where the undefeated streak comes to an end for the Sooners. I like Alabama. I think that they should be a consensus top 5 team in the SEC. And give me a Mark Sears, player of the year caliber performance. He hasn't really delivered on that billing so far this year, but I know he's got it in him. But I think Alabama's going to have too much to overcome here for Oklahoma.
I definitely agree. I think Grant Nelson, Sears, and LeBaron Philon are all three going to have quality games tomorrow and push them to the top of that game. I think this is going to be another really neck-and-neck game.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like a 4-3 point game-ish.
Yeah, I definitely see it being close. Oklahoma's not going to go down without a fight. I mean, I mentioned Porter Moser in the last episode as a early Coach of the Year candidate favorite for me, and he's shown it so far with the undefeated record, obviously, and he's got a hell of a squad there. I would say, though, the recipe for me, if you're Porter and that Oklahoma team, Alabama has been a little bit rocky when it comes to defensive efficiency so far this season. they've had games where they've given up a lot of points. I think they're averaging close to around 80 points against this season. And, Jeremiah Fears, if he goes into that building hot and one of those guys around him, like a Duke Miles or a Jalen Moore, if they can catch some fire too, you could definitely see them having a route to victory and pulling off I wouldn't say it's an upset, but kind of a little bit of a shocking result because I don't think many people are really even thinking Oklahoma's going to go in and win this one because ESPN's matchup predictor currently has Alabama at 83% in this one. I think that's a little high. I would give I would give Bama more of a 60-40 edge, but I mean we know how notorious ESPN analytics is for just being, to put it frankly, dog shit. But
yeah,
we'll see. I think that like I said, Oklahoma, you want to exploit Alabama defensively and make them work to get stops. And if you do that and one of your guys catches fire, that you could be cooking with something there to get upset in Tuscaloosa. But beyond that, there's some other games in the SEC as well. We got Missouri versus Auburn in the jungle. I think Auburn wins easily there. Not much to expand on, really. I'm sure you agree, Blake.
Yeah.
Janai Broome, keep doing Janai Broome things. Tahad Pettiford, Chad Baker Mazzara, all those guys that have made Auburn the outstanding team they are so far. South Carolina, they're going to Mississippi State down there in Starkville. Do we think South Carolina has some magic in them to get an upset here, or are we rolling with the Bulldogs?
I mean, I predicted that South Carolina Clemson game right before, but I'm going the opposite of predicting for South Carolina here. I'm going with Mississippi State handling business. I think the Mississippi State physicality exposes that South Carolina team in a tough environment at the Coliseum. I just don't think it's going to be close, to be honest with you.
Yeah. An intriguing matchup, I think, slightly in the SEC as well. It's kind of coinciding with the Florida-Kentucky game. There may not be a ton of eyes on it, but Georgia's going to Ole Miss. Georgia's sitting at 12-1 on the year so far. Obviously, they got the stud freshman talent, Asa Newell. A lot of freshman talent in the SEC overall this year. Could we see Georgia in an up spot here? Because I think maybe they could pull it off here. If Asa Newell starts cooking and the rest of those guys around him can chip in, this might be one of those games I mentioned on the SEC the regular season predictions. Like there's going to be a game stolen that you don't expect from a team that maybe you're thinking is going to finish high. And I could see this being a troublesome spot for the Rebels.
Yeah, I think Georgia does pull this one off. Ole Miss actually comes into the game, for as a 4.5 point favorite right now. So I'm going against the spread here. I think Georgia pulls this one off.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and join you. I think Georgia gets an upset here. I think this will be one of the bigger upsets we see in the day so far. I like Georgia. In terms of the grand scheme of the SEC, they're not going to be a top dog by any means. They may not even make their way into the middle of the pack, but that's not a slight to anyone because the SEC, like we've talked about at length, we know how good it is. You throw this team in like the ACC or something, I could definitely see them being more of a force there, but they've got a solid group. Tyron Lawrence, he's a great transfer from Vandy, very solid player. Asa Newell, you got him, and then RJ Godfrey, he's been putting up good numbers this year. So I could definitely see this being upset potential for the Bulldogs. So we'll see if that take ages well or if it ages poorly. We unfortunately don't have our guys Jake Roll and Jack Sullivan to give their predictions. Maybe we'll put out a graphic of some sorts leading into game day tomorrow to get them involved. But looking at the SEC more, we do have another notable matchup, kind of the last of the really notable ones on this Saturday. Texas versus Texas A&M, a rivalry that was already renewed in football season this year where the Longhorns obviously came out on top. Do we think that the Longhorns, now they're going to be going to Reed Arena, which we know is a very underrated environment when it's at its best. Do we think that the Longhorns get another win in this rivalry in a different sport, or do we like Wade Taylor in this spot and the magic of the Yell leaders there down in Texas A&M?
I'm going with the Aggies here. and another close game. I feel like every game tomorrow, well, the top 25 matchups, I feel like all those games will be really close. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be one or two games that end up in a belt-to-ass performance, but I do think the Aggies pull this one off in a close game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Trey Johnson, love what I've seen out of him so far. He's very tough as a freshman. This conference has a lot of star freshmen so far, and I mean, if you're a Longhorns fan, you got to be glad that you're getting Tremont Mark back. Jordan Pope, he's been solid for them as well in the backcourt, and then you got guys like Kaluma there in the front holding it down. I think that this will be a close game. I'm not sure if the Longhorns pull it out because I think that the home court is going to be a factor in this one, but I could very well see myself being wrong because I mentioned in my rankings of Texas, this team, they've got talent. There's no denying that they've got talent. Whether they piece it together or not, that'll be a different story. We'll see how that goes as the season progresses. But I'm looking at their schedule as well right now, Blake. They start off with A&M, then they got to play Auburn, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Florida over the
Yeah, that's
course of their next
brutal.
couple games. That is a gauntlet of all gauntlets. And I mean, if you could steal one here, or maybe when you get one of those top dogs, Auburn and Tennessee at home, steal one of those, I mean, you're going to be putting yourself in a good spot. And I think that we will see them steal a game or two, but I don't see it being this one. But
No.
moving past the SEC, I mean, there are other leagues that are going at it this weekend. Non-conference is officially behind us. In the ACC, not a whole lot to talk about here, but Duke is going on the road to SMU, currently favored by 7.5. Duke, the number 4 team in the country. Both these squads sit at 11-2 so far in the year. SMU, they've been having a pretty solid start to the year overall, coming in averaging 87 points per game. So high-powered offense there so far. Now, have they played the best teams and kind of like, how Duke's been having a tough non-conference schedule? No. But do we see this being a trouble spot here for Duke, or is this going to be a taking care of business there for Shire and Cooper Flag?
I think Duke ends up taking care of business. I think they win by like 12, somewhere around there. They're only opening as a 7.5 point favorite in spread. But SMU, they really haven't played anyone super notable. I mean, they've lost by 11 to Butler. Butler sucks this year. They lost by 5 to Mississippi State. They beat Virginia by 12, but they only put 63 points up against them. It's like a common Virginia defense game. They beat LSU by 10. I mean, it's nobody really special they beat. So, I mean, I do think Duke, excuse me, I'm sick still. I do think they come into the game and handle business here.
SMU, they did sell this game out, so kudos to them. They're going to have a rocking environment there. I don't know if they're overall going to have enough to pull off the W there, but we'll see. I could see this being a close game at half where Duke pulls away and takes care of business. Cooper Flag just puts the team on his shoulders and takes them to a win. But I'll have my eyes on it. I'm not going to call an upset here, but I do think it might be a little bit of a close game. We'll have eyes on that for sure. But in the Big 12, this is a good matchup here. We alluded to it earlier when we were talking about Kansas and where they match up against the other teams in that conference. Baylor and Iowa State.
This is a masterpiece.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. Baylor, I mentioned in the resolution episode of the Full Court Trap that it's time to start piling together some quality wins. It's time to get VJ Edgecombe more involved and clicking on all cylinders. And, well, I mean, what a way to start it off here. They've won one conference game already, but, I mean, this is the first true test, in my opinion, that they're going to have against a Iowa State team that I see as a Final Four caliber team and one of the teams I could see cutting down the nets in April. So, Blake, really excited for this one. Iowa State currently opens as an 8.5 point favorite. I think I might take Baylor to cover in this spot. I don't know about you.
I think Iowa State covers it. I mean, what was I gonna say? Oh, Baylor's like 2-3 right now. against like top 25 opponents. They got dominated first game of the season, as we remember, 101-63 to Gonzaga, who's shown to be kind of shaky at times. They beat Arkansas by 5. They beat St. John's by 1, but it took them 2 overtimes to do it. They got boat raced by Tennessee. They got steamrolled by UConn. Well, I lied. They didn't get steamrolled by UConn. They lost by 4. I meant to say they got steamrolled by Tennessee. But they lost by 4 to UConn. So, I mean, this is really, I think, I don't want to say make or break because they got plenty of opportunities down the line. But I do think this is a huge, emphatic win or loss for them. If they win this could be big time moving into even more conference games. If they lose this, you just got to keep your head up and keep rolling.
Yeah, for sure. I think, this game might be won and lost in the backcourt. You've got Taman Lipsey and Keshawn Gilbert, which is a great duo there for the Cyclones. And then on the other end, you got an experienced guy in Jeremy Roach, who's won at the highest levels with Duke. And then you got VJ Edgecombe, a guy who is an NBA talent when he puts it all together. And he had a solid outing against Utah in the conference opener for them. He had 19, I believe. So that's going to be an intriguing matchup. I definitely think that that's going to be one where you could see the momentum swing in favor of one or the other. Obviously, the home court is going to play a factor as well there. This game is at Hilton Coliseum. Tipping off. Too used to football season. We got to get that out of our wiring there. That's winding down. Tipping off at 2 o'clock. So I definitely think, I want to say that I definitely think Iowa State takes it, but I could see Baylor, coming out and finally putting it together and being the team that people have expected them to be. But I think in order for that to happen, you're going to have, VJ Edgecombe. I want to see him have a solid game. Norchad Omier, he needs to be the stable, dominant force that he can be in the paint. And then maybe I could see Robert Wright coming off the bench and cooking, maybe start flame throwing there because that dude's a baller. He's been having a good year so far, but give me the home team in this one. I think that the home court is often a very crucial factor when it comes to these conference matchups, and you put this game in Baylor, I think I take Baylor probably, but I think the mix of Taman Lipsey and then Keshawn Gilbert, Curtis Jones, all those guys, Joshua Jefferson, it's just going to be too much in that environment. So I think it'll be a close one to give me Iowa State. And then we got some other Big 12 action, Cincinnati versus Arizona. Arizona team that's looking to finally get right this season. They've been off to a troublesome start, sitting currently at 7-5, I believe, on the year.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, looking like a football bowl game record there. But they just got a win against TCU, a 9-point win. They've ripped off a couple in a row now after that stinker they dropped against UCLA. I will note that this game is at Cincinnati, so keep that in mind when making your pick here, Blake. But do we think that this Arizona team kind of, is starting to find their groove a little bit and can pick up a quality win here, or do you not see it?
To be flat out honest with you, Cincinnati, they're winning this. Arizona, you're not impressing me at all. Cincinnati's going to end up winning this by like 7.
You know what? Give me Arizona in this one. The Wildcats prevail. I think Caleb Love puts it together, has a vintage performance. He's been in college basketball for about 27 years now, so we can qualify his performances as vintage. I say that he comes out and has one of those heat check games, puts it all together, and they get a quality win here to kind of boost the status in the overall realm of the NCAA tournament and all that, because they got work to do if they want to get into that picture. That record they're sitting at right now isn't going to cut it. They're going to have to pick up some quality wins in the Big 12 to kickstart their hopes again.
Yeah.
Definitely. And the guys around him, besides Caleb Love, he can't do it all on himself. You got to see something out of Jaden Bradley. Trey Townsend, Oakland legend. Maybe he gets something cooking there, but it's going to have to be somebody that steps up besides Caleb Love, because if you're going to be solely dependent on Caleb Love, then it can get a little bit ugly there. But I do think he has a solid outing tomorrow, and give me the Wildcats there in an upset spot. Then switching over to the Big Ten, a notable matchup, we got UCLA going to Nebraska. The Bruins heading into Lincoln there. The weird looking to call this a Big Ten matchup now with UCLA going all the way to Lincoln, Nebraska there at the Pinnacle Bank Arena. But do we think that Nebraska pulls off an upset here, Blake? Both these squads sitting at 11-2 right now. UCLA, that obviously over the holidays they had that big win against Gonzaga. That was an impressive one for them. I think they may just keep things rolling here and avoid the road scare. But I mean, Nebraska, if you catch them hot, then I could see the vision for an upset here.
I do think the Bruins not handle business, but I do think they end up closing the game out and get a close win. I do think Cornhuskers Nation is going to come out ruckus really loud tomorrow, but I think UCLA pulls this one off.
Yeah, I think the UCLA handles their business here. Give me a big game from Tyler Bilodeau. If you're a Nebraska fan, you want Bryce Williams to come out and start cooking and get that home court popping, make UCLA uncomfortable, get Mick Cronin angry because we've seen how he gets. You rattle that guy and he's fucking fuming, just red hot. So we'll see how that one pans out. Transitioning back to the Big 12, we got BYU versus Houston. This one is at Houston, so and an ESPN Plus matchup. So go ahead and get your stolen subscriptions there ready if you don't have one already. I personally, with this being at Houston, not sure if I see the pathway for Kevin Young to get an upset here. You know, AJ DeBanza, he's not walking through that door for a couple of months, but this is still a solid BYU team. Not to discredit them or anything, just cracking some jokes here, but I think Houston takes care of their business here, and they've gone through that stretch where they came out of non-conference against their marquee opponents a little bit wounded, and then they had their run of get-right games, buy games, you might say, and now they're heading into conference play looking to put themselves back on the national radar, and you got to get this one to start it off.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to say it. I think
say it.
Never mind, I'm not doing that. I was thinking about Clip Farman saying BYU. Houston, give me them by 8 or 9. BYU's kind of struggled with quality opponents, I feel like. I do think Cannon Catchings and the Igor Demon and also Richie Saunders. I really think all three of those guys have good games tomorrow. I don't think it's going to be enough to overcome LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. But the only thing that concerns me with this Houston team is they are coming off a relatively sloppy performance against Oklahoma State. They only put up 60 points in that game, 60-47 W. That was a little bit rough. At halftime, we noted on the pod, the last recording we had doing live production, it was 28-18 at half. So this Houston team, they're going to have to figure out something offensively as they head into league play here, and that's definitely going to be a make or break thing for them, in my opinion. And if they're going to put themselves over the likes of Baylor and Kansas, I don't know if they'll overcome Iowa State or not. I mean, they're going to have to figure out some kind of rhythm, and I definitely think they're still trying to kind of find their identity after losing Jamal Shedd last year, because that dude was a bucket getter for them. And LJ Cryer, he's trying to be that guy for him. We'll see if he can maintain it, but that's definitely going to be a team to watch as we head into the conference slate. But transitioning into a couple of smaller matchups before we move on, it's crazy to say that North Carolina is in a smaller matchup here, but we mentioned it earlier. They're going to Notre Dame, taking on the Fighting Irish. You know what? I'm gonna pick the upset here. I think the Fighting Irish get it done. North Carolina's tourney hopes take another hit, and yeah, give me the Fighting Irish here. I think they get the upset.
I don't think I can go with you. Notre Dame here. My bad. I'm getting confused again. I
No,
think
you're
Notre
good.
Dame. I think this game will be closer, but I think North Carolina can overcome their demons of sorts and pull this one off. I think the crowd's going to be insane tomorrow. Sold out crowd. Uh, I don't think Marcus Burton's playing tomorrow. I could be wrong. Let me check real quick though. And if
Yeah,
he's not,
that
he's out. I think so. He's out. Yeah. Give me North Carolina here. Tay Davis, he's been going off the season though. 16.6 points a game and almost 6 boards a game for Notre Dame. And Braden Shrewsbury, the son of Coach Shrewsbury for Notre Dame. Those two guys have been carrying that team so far this season with the absence of Marcus Burton after going down early in the season against Rutgers. I just don't think it's going to be enough to overcome Ian Jackson.
fair enough. Fair enough. And in the full court traps PU matchup of the weekend, we have Miami taking on Virginia Tech. Talk about a awful basketball game. The winner of this one is the people that don't tune in my opinion. But Blake, if we had to pick a winner of this game, who are we going with? Give me Virginia Tech.
I don't even know if I want to pick a winner of this game. This game is awful.
It is at Virginia Tech, if that sways you one way or the other.
Give me Virginia Tech, I guess. I mean, Miami, they lost freaking Larry Nagy, quit on them in the middle of the season. So, I mean, give me the Hokies, even though they've been awful as well this season. This game is one that I definitely won't be tuned into on live television. I don't think it's going to be a pretty game either way.
No, not at all. I mean, like I said, full court traps PU matchup of the week. Let's make that a segment as we
might have to make it a segment.
Yeah, worst game of the week. But moving past that one, I see St. John's is taking on Butler here. I assume we're going to take St. John's to take care of business.
St. John's. Yeah. On to the next one.
On to the next one. I'm scanning our bulletin board here, looking for any other quality matchups. This may not be considered a quality matchup, but it's going to be an intriguing one in terms of the Big 12. Kansas State versus TCU, a battle of 7 and 5 teams. Do we think that Coleman Hawkins gets things going and earns his NIL bag, or are we going to take the home court Horned Frogs here?
Give me Kansas State. TCU suck this year. So is Kansas State. But, I mean, Coleman Hawkins just had a good performance the other day. Give me Kansas State.
ACC, we've got another matchup, Louisville and Virginia. Give me the Cards in this one.
Who do you say? Sorry, keep calling
Louisville and post-Tony Bennett, Virginia.
Oh, Louisville. I feel like I've said this 5 times already, but next one.
Next. This one, this is slightly intriguing because these are two teams that I have pitted in the bottom of the SEC, but they have quality records to start the year off. We got 12-1 Vandy against 11-2 LSU at Baton Rouge. Cam Carter, he's been absolutely hooping for LSU so far this year, and I think he's going to keep hooping in this one, and they get a win to start off conference play against the Commodores.
Give me Vandy.
Oh, you're taking the Doors.
Simple as that. Give me Vandy. Come on.
Give me the Doors. Shout out Pat McAfee. Yeah, anyways, moving on here. I think we've about covered all of our bases. Actually, one more matchup of note, another odd Big Ten matchup. You know, we mentioned UCLA, Nebraska. Michigan and USC. This being a Big Ten, it's going to take a lot of getting used to with some of these teams being considered conference opponents now. But Michigan, I like what they got with Danny Wolf there, Vlad Golden, the Twin Towers of the Big Ten. I think they get one done here against the must bus over there in Southern California.
The mid bus. Give me Michigan.
The mid bus. the mid bus that ran from the grind of SEC that was expanding and sent Cal over to the Hogs. Yeah, I like Michigan comfortably in this one for sure. If you're a Trojan fan, I think you gotta. I don't even really know who's gonna step up here for them to win. I guess if you're going to expect
Desmond Claude.
Yeah, it's going to have to be Desmond Claude. Yeah. looking all around at that
Fine.
USC roster, there's not really a whole lot to be enthused by, to be quite
St.
honest.
Thomas, pick up your production too.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. But Blake,
Before we move on,
yeah,
Morehead State takes on Tennessee Tech. Shout out Hunter Kirk. Who we
Hunter
rolling
Kirk.
with here?
Yeah,
We rolling with?
He said he's trapped on a road trip with the squad because of this winter storm that's ravaging the eastern part of the United States. So Hunter,
For
we're
9
thinking about
days.
you. Get you know what? Give me Morehead.
Just for that, give us Morehead State, baby. Come on.
Janai Broom, the proud alumnus of Morehead, Kentucky. Yes, sir. Give us.
And then one more.
Oh yeah,
one more mid-major game we're looking at here.
Welcome to the mid-major spotlight of the Full Court Trap Pod, people.
I lost it.
All you mid-major junkies out there who are wondering when you were going to get your love, here it is.
Purdue Fort Wayne. I'm 45 minutes from there. Don't look at my address or don't stalk me. But they take on Youngstown State. Purdue Fort Wayne's 10-6 on the season. Youngstown State's 10-5. Who we rolling here with, Luke? It's at Purdue Fort Wayne.
Give me Youngstown State. Shout out Mark Stoops.
No, we ain't rolling with them. Give me the Mastodons.
Woo! Mastodons.
I can't even do the fucking elephant thing.
Oh my God, this has gone off the rails. But ladies and gentlemen, that recaps your Saturday preview. Blake, before we move on completely from the previews, there are some games on Sunday to note. Providence is taking on UConn. I believe last I checked, Bryce Hopkins is still, it's kind of up in the air whether he's going to play for Providence or not. So give me Dan Hurley easily. I think Dan
Hurley by 20.
Yep, Dan Hurley. The stupid podcasters that we are going to pick UConn here.
And Dan Hurley, we're sorry. We're sorry, man. We love you.
Please come on for an interview.
Please.
Anyways.
We're begging you.
Moving to the Big Ten, this is a somewhat intriguing matchup. Kind of. Purdue and Northwestern. It's at
Northwestern.
Purdue.
Give me them.
Brooks Barnheiser. He's averaging 20 a game. Do we think that Northwestern pulls it off?
Yeah, this is actually a homecoming for Brooks Barnheiser as well. He's from that area. And, give me Northwestern here. 20 point, 11 rebound, 5 assist game for Brooks Barnheiser. And then his partner in crime on that team, a lefty for Northwestern. His name is Nick Martinelli. I think he's going to have another big game as well. He's averaging 20 points a game, 5 boards a game as well. So, I mean, those two this season have been unbelievable. One of the most underrated duos in all the country.
If this were at Northwestern, I would agree with you, but because it's at Purdue, give me Purdue. I think Trey Kaufman-Wren has a good outing. Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, they get things going and start to get things right. I mean, they're 10-4 heading into the meat and potatoes of conference play, so a lot to improve on there. Kansas, they don't get a break after taking that stumble to West Virginia and Fog Allen. They got to go to UCF, which is a quality team. 10-2 on the year so far, highlighted by a guy like Keyshawn Hall, 15 points per game. Blake, one of the premier games to start off the young college basketball season in November was that, I believe, triple overtime classic between LSU and UCF. That was a very high-scoring affair. Do we think that UCF hands Kansas 2 straight L's, or is this going to be an angry Kansas team that comes out wanting to prove something?
I do think Kansas handles this one. There is a world, though. I mean, I'm not saying this to make myself look good or save myself for a prediction. I do think there is a world where UCF can pull this one off. I mean, they got 3 guys averaging 15-plus a game right now, so, I mean, they definitely could pull it off. But I think Kansas does handle UCF in this one.
Yeah, I mean, if Jordan Ivy Curry and Keyshawn Hall have a good outing, I see them giving Kansas some trouble. I don't see them taking down Kansas completely. I'm going to roll with the Jayhawks here in a get-back spot. Maybe A.J. Storr will finally show some signs of life and start to prove that he's worth the NIL bag that he got. And the guys around him, Rylan Griffin, David Coyd off the bench, they're going to have to start producing. You want to see Hunter Dickinson start to do more Hunter Dickinson things again. He's kind of had a mid outing last time, so we'll see if they get things rolling again. KJ Adams as well. He didn't have a great outing in that loss against West Virginia, but I think Kansas gets themselves right here. And looking past that one into the Big Ten again, we have Maryland, Oregon, which we already talked about. It's going to be a test for Oregon, but I do believe Oregon comes out on top.
Yeah, I think Oregon comes out with this one as well.
And
Not
then we
much
got
to really be said about it. Actually, I lied. Give me Maryland. I'm sorry. I think Maryland pulls this one off. Derek Queen, Julian Reese. I think those guys come out firing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be a game that's worth watching. I mean, Maryland, I think they're a slept-on team in terms of the Big Ten. I mean, Derek Queen, like you said, he's tough, so they're going to give Oregon problems. I think Oregon's going to come out angry after they just took a beating to a team we're about to discuss, Illinois. They're going to Washington. Not much to say here. I'm going with Illinois.
Yeah, Illinois easily.
Yeah, and then Memphis, Penny's Tigers on Sunday. They're taking on a North Texas team that we actually just highlighted on the page a few days ago. Aiton Wright, he's the leading scorer on that team, I believe, so far. He had a hell of a buzzer beater to open up their conference play, I believe. And I don't see them posing a threat here to Memphis. But, I mean, it's a matchup of two teams that are similar record-wise. But give me Memphis. There's too much talent on that roster. PJ Haggerty, Tyrese Hunter, Colby Rogers. We talk about them what seems like on a weekly basis now. And I think one of those three guys, if not more of them, they're going to do their thing and going to get an easy win there if you're a Memphis fan.
Yeah, sorry, Aiton Wright, but give me Memphis by 15. North Texas, every time they've played a team with a somewhat of a pulse, I mean, they've practically struggled. I mean, they played at High Point, who, I mean, I don't think they're a really good team this year in their conference. They lost 76-71. They beat UAB. UAB is really not that good this year. They beat Minnesota by 3. They lost by 7. McNeese is ran by Will Wade right now. I mean, they beat Oregon State by 3. Lost by 4 to Utah State. And they just haven't played hardly anyone really that good. Memphis, I think they come out and have at least like 2 guys score 18 plus.
Nice, yeah. I could definitely see that, but those are about all the games we have to cover for the weekend. It's nice to have a whole bulky slate to talk about here. That's the first major one of the year. We got much more to come. College basketball season's just starting to begin here. Conference play across all the leagues. It's going to be fun to watch, but we got one more minor thing to discuss before we move on today, Blake, and call it an episode. John Rothstein, he made some waves with a tweet earlier today in the whole NCAA world, not just college basketball, but evidently there are rumors about the NCAA potentially allowing 5 years of eligibility to become the norm for every athlete across all sports. And he said this discussion with the NCAA is supposed to take place early 2025. I'm not sure if they have some type of meeting scheduled where they always go over a list of certain topics, but it's obviously on the agenda and it's a possibility for the NCAA. And Blake, I mean, I don't really see a way where this is good for just, I mean, not even thinking about college basketball really, but all of sports. I just don't really see what all this does, giving people an extra year and the super senior becoming the norm, because that's just not, how real life academics works for the common college student. And I really don't see what most people have to gain from it unless, you lose a year because of an injury or something unforeseen. But even then, there's medical red shirts, other things like that, avenues to pursue an extra year without, giving everyone an extra year. So what are we thinking about this news that came out earlier today? I would assume you're not too high on it.
I mean this with the utmost respect. The NCAA is on a hot streak of taking L's right now. I mean, first they were trying to expand the NCAA tourney. I mean, they talked about it to put it at like what 74 teams, 72, 76, around there. And now they're talking about letting every NCAA athlete have 5 years of eligibility, which is just flat out stupid. I mean, that's not real life. College is 4 years unless you have injuries, unless you're a grad student, et cetera, et cetera. Having a fifth year just to flat hand it out, I mean, that's just not realistic. Like, I just don't see a world where that works out in the end. This also ruins recruiting for high school students immensely. It's going to be guys that are in high school that want to play at this level hurting for a spot on a team. I feel like if you're not ranked in the top 150 on like let's say 247 Sports, if you're not highly sought after from like the recruiting companies like Made Hoops, Rivals, 247, On Three, et cetera, then you're gonna be hurting for a spot on the team, and that's sad to see. I feel like high school basketball is a completely different game now. It's not really the same. Same can be said for college basketball. Recruiting is just a whole different animal. I really don't like the fifth year aspect. I mean, it really ruins opportunities for kids that want to be playing at the next level.
Yeah, and I mean, they mentioned too the whole junior college athletes, that eligibility not counting against them, so you factor that in as well. I mean, you're given a lot of leeway to just people sticking around for longer than I guess you could say they're welcome. And I mean, in some circumstances, this will be good for people. Athletes that can't come into a sport right away and make an immediate impact. They have some more time to develop. They get that extra year, but overall, I mean, I don't really see the use for this, to be honest. We're just now starting to phase out the COVID years and all that stuff. And I mean, I saw something recently. It was absolutely ridiculous. There was a player for Miami football. I forget what his name is. And I mean, all due respect to him, he had his own journey and whatnot, setbacks that led to more eligibilities. But he spent 9 years at the collegiate level.
You're talking about the old Oregon player, Cam McCormick?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was literally just about to say something like that. As a NCAA, you're making it easier for guys to spend almost a career's worth of time spent in the NCAA as they could be playing professionally somewhere. That's just stupid. That doesn't need to be made. I don't know why anyone is playing 9 years of NCAA ball. I mean, granted, injuries happen, life happens, yada, yada, yada. But, I mean, you should be having a real job at that point.
For perspective, that guy, so 9 years, we are in the year of our Lord 2025. That would have put him just starting in college at 2016. That is guys unreal.
Who was a freshman that year in 2016 in football? Do you remember at all?
In football?
Yeah.
I don't recall in football, but when I think about basketball, that would have been Trae Young was a freshman that year, I believe. That was Trae Young, Shea, trying to think of who else. That would have been the year that I think, God, who did win the title that year? Was it Villanova that year? If I remember correctly. Yeah, because 2016 they beat North Carolina, and then the next year in 2017, that's when Carolina got the title in that revenge year. But
2016 is the year of Chris Jenkins, the Archie Diacono, the Jenkins Hall of Fame shot. That put in the frickin' Hall of Fame, literally.
That's one of my all-time favorite March moments. But yeah, I mean, super seniors, don't really see the use for it in the sport. We'll see if it's just going to be just talks or if this is going to amount to something and the NCAA is going to make it a policy. I could definitely see a lot of backlash resulting from this if it is ultimately put into fruition, but we'll find out. I mean, the NCAA, they're notorious for their incompetence. So I will not put it past them if this ultimately gets put into effect. But Blake, we've had a solid, thorough episode here. Got to get this edited and out to the people before our big slate of games tomorrow. Anything
Sure.
else you want to say to the people before we head on out of here for the evening?
I really just want to say thank you guys for the continued support on here. We're going to be having a lot more content coming out here soon, whether that's on our TikTok, YouTube Reels, YouTube episodes, Instagram content, Twitter, yada, yada, yada. We're going to probably be having more Take Over Your Trap episodes, hopefully in the near future. And we just got a lot more stuff we're looking to do, interviews, things like that for you guys. So just thank you guys for the continued support. Follow our socials. We'll link those in the description. And yeah, thank you guys for the continued support.
And one of these days, I swear we will get Jake Kroll and Jack Sullivan on the same episode. It might happen weeks from now. It may happen a month from now, but it'll happen eventually. Jake's a little under the weather, so I hope he gets better. Sully, he's off fighting his own battles at work, but me and Blake, we're always here. We're the glue guys of the Full Court Trap Pod.
Yeah, we got you guys.
The consistent stabilizing force will always be here. We're going to be here all the way through March and April. What do we say, Mr. Rothstein? He's we sleep in May.
We sleep in May. Yeah.
This podcast will sleep in May as well. It's full throttle from this point on. But Blake, let's get out of here. Let's get this thing wrapped up and put a bow on it for the people. Get this thing out on all of our respective platforms. For now, this is Luke Tackett signing off here with my main man, Blake Smith. We'll talk to y'all after this weekend of hoops we got ahead of us. Everybody enjoy and take it all in.